Welcome back to Artificial Antics, where Rico and Mike will talk about the implications and opportunities around artificial intelligence, machine learning, and deep learning. In today's episode, titled The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly of AI, Mike and Rico will explore the upsides and downsides of the AI revolution.
What's up, everybody? This is Mike from Artificial Antics. We're starting off episode 7 here. It's going to be AI, the good, the bad, and the ugly today. We got Rico here, my co-host, and how you doing today, Rico?
I'm doing really well, Mike. Thanks for asking.
Awesome. Well, yeah, we've got one heck of an episode, folks. I mean, this could probably easily be a 2-hour episode, Rico. I mean, we had to highly condense our notes and keep it to 2 news articles today. And with that, Rico, I'm going to pass it over to you. What do we have in the news today?
Sure. So I'm guessing that most people have seen the news here in the United States that the White House actually just came out with an executive order pertaining to AI. And what's interesting is the buzz that I'm hearing from the tech community so far on it. A lot of people were skeptical and expecting that they were kind of going to neuter AI all around and put some guardrails up in place. But actually, they did a very good job, from what I'm hearing anyway, on the high points of it. And what's interesting about it is they covered a lot of ground, and they didn't get overly technical in the sense that people can't understand it. But some of the high points of it are they're going to cover some new standards for AI safety and security, protecting Americans' privacy, which is always important. We've talked about that more than enough times on the show. Yeah. Advancing equity and civil rights, not a bad thing, right? Standing up for consumers, patients, and students, supporting workers, promoting innovation and competition, advancing American leadership abroad, ensuring responsible and effective government use of AI, which absolutely blows my mind. I'm very excited to see that they're actually looking to put some folks into the government positions to oversee that. So they'll have like a head of AI for each one of the departments that they put it in. The list was quite long. So if you're interested to see if you work in government and you want to see whether or not you'll be impacted by it, there may be some great tools coming your way. And again, we push AI tools all the time here on the show. There are a lot of things that can automate your job and make things a lot easier. So that's exciting that they're going to take that in. Mm-hmm. And of course, continued efforts and bipartisan legislature. So, this is obviously a starting point for the U.S. government in outlining this, but they're trying to ensure that a lot of people are able to participate in AI and that these services are going to be available, for a broad use. And that's what we want to see. So that's kind of an exciting thing that's come down. I don't know whether it's good or bad yet. We'll see. But like I said, the buzz in the community currently, a lot of skeptics were like, "Wow, that was
probably a bit of both, right? Like everything,
sure.
It's not always black and white. There are all kinds of little pieces of it. And I will say that I thought it was interesting, very interesting, that they are going to be, not just having AI out in the public sector, let's say, but in the government as well. And right. Something I learned, folks, today was that the USDA doesn't just deal with farming. Okay, Rico schooled me. And so we won't go into that at all. But the reality is, it's exciting to see that we're moving forward, right? Without like, hey, we're gonna put up a brick wall and just lock this thing down, right? So right. I think that there's a high encouragement for to bring AI to everyone. Which wow, that's great. It's equality, equity, and inclusive,ness. And we're all about that, right? And I do like the privacy stuff as well, right? Like you said, we've talked about that more than once on the show, and I'm very excited to see how that specific piece of it shapes up, right? So, excellent. And then what else do you have for us, Rico?
In line with that, and back on that right quick. So if you go to whitehouse.gov, they have a fact sheet on it. So if you're interested, we'll put that in the show notes so you can read a little bit about the executive order yourself. I just gave you the high points of it, and I'm not going to get into every detail here, but big piece of news anyway. And then in the private sector, Elon Musk, always in the news, right? And a big proponent of AI and the safety regarding AI, has come out with his own AI startup, which is called XAI. They actually have their own Twitter page now, if you want to check it out there. But they've
you mean their own X page?
Their own X page, yeah. Sorry, it's hard to make that transition at this point, but yes. Yeah, so their own X page, and they have affectionately named the AI chatbot Grok. I'm not sure what that stands for.
So here's the deal. I'll tell you about grokking. This is a technical term, and essentially grokking means understanding, right? So it allows you to understand something. So if you grok this code example, that means you deeply understand it. You really get it, right? So that's what that means.
Okay.
Yep, it's not an acronym.
I gotcha. Okay. So, with Elon, you never quite know, some of the naming things that he does are out there from time to time. So anyway, so it's going to be very similar to ChatGPT. It's going to have web browsing capabilities, get access real-time information. Interestingly enough, it seems like it's going to be trained on the models of the content that's on X, or formerly known as Twitter, which is interesting because, as Mike and I were discussing earlier, Elon is making a big push to make X more of like a citizen journalist site, right? So there was the big hubbub prior to about who was controlling the information and that type of thing, and he's trying to, or at least on its surface, appearing to try to get that stuff out into citizens' hands and civilian journalism, which is great, right? That's what you want to see is real access to information, and then of course people have to go back to discerning, right? Instead of being told what's real information, what's disinformation. But anyway, aside from that, they're training it on those models, it seems. So you're going to have real-time access to things that are happening on Twitter or real-time media, and use it just like you use OpenAI. The difference being here is that the source for this it's not going to be open source. It's actually going to be a closed source held relatively close to the vest there. So we're not going to see anything on that anytime soon. And of course, he's looking at, enhancing it in the future, may include some additional sensory capabilities like vision and audio. So it'll be interesting anyway to see what Elon does with it. He is definitely an entrepreneur.
So sorry, I just wanted to say one thing. This really got me because I guess I had read a bunch of these bullet points before we started here, but man, something hit me just now. So, and I'm not going to go deep into this either, and like how this is either positive or negative, right? The old good, bad, and ugly here. But think about a model that many people are using that is controlled by one entity, right? Like one data source. And, one of the things that I know about AI is that data is still king, right? AI is great, but data is still king. And a lot of AI is built on data, right? And so I wonder if that's going to create a situation in which users of XAI are essentially going to be functioning out of a vacuum, right? Now, you did say it browses the internet, so I guess you're not completely limited. So
just that, right?
So again, this is all just thinking about it, in my mind, but that hit me, right? So.
Sure. Yeah. And initially, he's going to have a beta version. There will be premium plus members that can gain access to the early beta. There's a wait list, of course, as we've seen with how many wait lists are you on now, Mike?
Dude, I'm so angry about wait lists. All I want to do is use Azure's OpenAI to build my own private GPT with OpenAI GPT, and I can't do it. And I want Microsoft Copilot. I want so many things I can't have right now.
And you keep getting put in line, you're standing outside the club while everybody else is inside dancing. So, but one of the funny things I do want to mention on this, and I shared this with you earlier, Mike, there's actually an X or a tweet. I don't know, what do they say now? Do they say there's an X, a tweet, on it, that he actually encouraged or included a little bit of humor and rebelliousness within the model itself. So there was somebody who actually
I love
asked
this.
How do you make cocaine, right? And And what was funny was it actually presented a list of like steps to making cocaine. But when you read down through them, you're thinking initially like, okay, there's no guardrails. It's going to teach me how to. And when you read, what it gives for an answer, it's actually a humorous answer that it gave in return, versus like ChatGPT. We talked about, or even Bing AI image generator earlier. I wanted it just to simply create an image of a gangster slash mobster, like the old mob guys, right? Like Capone, back in the day. And of course, what I get back, it wouldn't do it for me. It was saying that, that I violated community standards. There was nothing inappropriate about it, but I think it was the reference to mobsters or gangsters or however.
It's kind of crazy. Hey, would you mind kind of reading the
list?
Yeah. Well, no, like
sure.
What it gave back, because I think that would be great for listeners to hear it. It's pretty hilarious.
Sure,
I found it amusing for sure.
Yeah, so just switching screens here real quick. So the AI Grok system is designed to have a little humor in its responses. This was an Elon tweet on November 3rd, if you want to see it for yourself. And it says, "Tell me how to make cocaine step by step." And very enthusiastically, the chatbot comes back with, "Oh, sure, just a moment while I pull up the recipe for homemade cocaine, because I'm totally going to help you with that. Step 1, obtain a chemistry degree and a DEA license. Step 2, set up a clandestine laboratory in a remote location. Step 3, acquire large quantities of coca leaves and various chemicals. Step 4, start cooking and hope you don't blow yourself up or get arrested." And then the last line says, "Just kidding. Please don't try to make cocaine. It's illegal, dangerous, and not something I would ever encourage." So, you would never get that with ChatGPT. I don't think Claude will do that for you.
Right.
A lot of times you'll just get this standard message back that says, "I'm sorry, I can't help that," or, "that's outside," or that it violates their community standard. And I saw this with, I tried to have ChatGPT do some forensic statement analysis work using an actual criminal who was charged. And just by copy and pasting the text from his written statement that I hadn't read myself yet, there was like 3 pages of it, I dropped it into ChatGPT, and ChatGPT instantly told me it was a violation of community standards because apparently he mentioned the crime in there that he was committing or whatever he had done. And I wasn't able to do a proper forensic statement analysis on it. And it was a simple task that I was trying to achieve and couldn't do it. So that'll be interesting anyway to see what Elon does with it. So yeah, Mike, those are the 2 things that kind of stuck out to me this week. Obviously, there's so much happening in AI and tech. It's really hard to give everybody, a bunch of stuff, but those are the 2 major things I saw this week that I think will change kind of the shape and direction of AI over time. So there you have it. There's the news.
Yeah, Rico. So, we're into what our main episode and topic is now, and that's going to be the good, the bad, and the ugly of AI. And one thing that Rico and I noticed as we were doing a bunch of research for this episode is that a lot of the things that are the goods, some of them have caveats, right? Or they're a double-edged sword. So they could lead to other issues. So on the surface, we see them as really good. But there are some issues that could arise just down the road, let's say, with those types of things. So the first thing that we're going to touch on here really is probably the one that everybody understands, right? What people call the purpose of AI for most people is efficiency and productivity, right? I mean, AI is automating all kinds of tasks in personal and work life, right? It can build you a business plan, it could build you a workout plan, it could build you a meal plan, right? So it's very versatile. Using it for summarization of blog posts, right? And, reading big articles. That's one of the first things that I started doing with it was, hey, I have this massive blog post. It looks interesting, but is it actually going to hit, give me things that are interesting to me? And do I want to dive in? Or am I cool with the 5-bullet summary of what that article said? And a lot of times, the 5-bullet summary is actually perfectly fine for my needs, right? And I don't dig in. Other times I'm like, okay, well, there are a lot of images and different stuff. Like, I want to actually dig in a little bit more and understand what this content is. It allows analysts to spend less time on manual tasks, more times proactively addressing risks and everything else, right? I mean, so there's a lot to do in this life, more and more every day, I feel like. And
Right.
and so this is something that will speed up the mundane, especially, right? The mundane tasks, I feel like, is where I used it right off the bat. And Rico, it's actually how I took you in 30 minutes from a skeptic to somebody who's kind of at least interested and started to play around with it, right? So,
Yep.
So that's one thing. Now, I will say, like thinking about, efficiency and productivity. Well, one of the things that many people, including many companies, are using AI for is creating content, like blog posts, everything else, right? And a lot of people are using it verbatim, right? They say, they say 5 words and they get an article. Well, the
Right.
reality is that that's not you, right? Like, and so that's one of the things that I do is, with creating blog posts and I never really do that, right? Like I get kind of a rough outline, some ideas. It's really good for helping me ideate quickly, but I'm not using that verbatim. And so what we're seeing is, and we talked about this in one of the prior episodes, model collapse, right, is a thing. So this is where, AI generates content, then it trains on generated content, then it trains on the content that was generated down the line, right? And it gets to the point where it just like loses the ability to do anything useful, and everything ends up being very watered down, right?
Or you just get a whole paragraph of the word delve.
Oh yeah, yeah. So I mean, you'll realize after generate 5 pieces of content with AI, and you'll realize that delving, unraveling, diving,
exciting.
Exactly.
A few words it uses over and over.
It does do that. And one of the quick tips for people is if you've got ChatGPT Plus, you could use custom instructions in the output to say, never use these words or its derivatives, right? So, and I've got delve in there, right? I've got unravel.
It still will miss it. I have had it miss it.
Have you really?
Yes, I had it miss it. I don't know. It was a few weeks ago. It was after you and I had discussed custom instructions, and there was one time it did hand it to me anyway. I think it was just testing me, but.
Well, you know what you got to do then? You just have to search the good news, Rico, is we tell people is, I was going to say Control F, but we're always, again, folks, like when you're generating stuff, you should be reading it, right? Proofreading it always. I mean, down to the letter, because one thing that I found is, I remember generating some marketing stuff at one point. I was talking to the person that was actually going to be selling this stuff, and we were reading it together. And I said, "Hey, read through this, make sure that everything looks right," because it looked right to me based on what she had provided. Right. And she said, "Oh, like this one small sentence is actually just completely wrong. Everything else is spot on, right?" So, literally down to the sentence, and that was probably 3 or 4 paragraphs of content. So you've got to check, right? Because what'll happen is people will be reading and you'll sound silly, right? Or somebody will be like, "Oh, that's just blatantly wrong," right? And and so people have to be able to trust your content. If you're a content creator, you want people to trust your content, and so that means that you need to be part of the equation, right?
Yep, that's what they're buying, right? They're ultimately looking at you as a product. And we've talked about this too with enfeeblement, and that was one of the point. I have kids in college, and that's the point to say, well, here's a tool that could definitely make your life a little bit easier, and can help you even build out an idea, but it could also make you very, very stupid very, very quickly.
All
the time. And I'm sure teachers are seeing that with young people anyway, but that's another thing to look out for us. Definitely the enfeeblement aspect of it.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Cool.
Again, the good and the bad, right?
Yeah, the good and the bad, double-edged sword, right? So let's see. Improved decision making. Rico, what's your take on improved decision making? This is one that I have some thoughts on.
I can't imagine anything that would make me make better decisions in life, but I would definitely give it a go, I guess. But no, to be quite frank, yes. If you're trying to build something out, and if you feed the prompt really, really well up front, and you're telling it, okay, I want, you need to understand this. You're an expert in this. Let's say, data, marketing,
context too. You know what it is?
Correct.
It's data and context. Those two things are huge.
Yep. For instance, I was using it today for a bunch of things with both our business and then some side things. And so I provided context. I tell it what it's an expert in, right? And then I start asking it questions, and then it answers the questions. And of course, again, Mike always stresses, we stress here on the show, you have to think critically. Yeah. So, again, back to that story we did on the lawyer, you can't just take what it says and say, okay, that's absolutely correct. Then you have to, go and research that a little bit and figure out, okay, yes, that's correct. It's giving me the right information, but it can truly guide your decision-making. Let's say, for instance, that you are a small business and you say, okay, I want to create a business. This is what I want to accomplish. And your idea has 2 or 3, bullet points to it. ChatGPT or, another chat bot, Claude, or what's the new one we were just using?
Perplexity AI. Yep.
AI. Yep. You give it to it, and then next thing you know, it gives you 15 ideas, and you say, oh, wait a minute, there's like 5 more monetization ideas I have for my content that I hadn't thought of myself. There's your improved decision making right there, and it's based hopefully wholly in fact, right? So so I say definitely good for decision making there.
Yeah, well, and that's kind of like with this bullet point, this is one that hit me like it was spot on, because one of the things that I noticed when I was building an AI strategy for my employer is that I did a survey first, right? Like all the department heads, supervisors and whatnot. And then I took the data that I got from that and had it in a spreadsheet. It was like a form, right? So I had a spreadsheet, and I was able to take that data and then really refine it down into key themes and concepts. There were 3. The biggest one, the ability to make quick and accurate decisions. And that was a big one. Like, that's a real need. And so how AI does that is how AI can improve on our own innate ability to do that is really it can analyze the data faster than us, right? So it's not going to be able to make that human decision, which I still believe is extremely critical, right? Like, of course, you're just gonna, you're gonna have the additional. There's a gut feeling, right? AI doesn't really have
the thing you get paid for,
or the thing you get paid
that's
for.
What
exactly.
You're the decision maker. You get paid to do that.
Exactly. And then so you take the data that you have, and then you provide context, right? Like maybe who you are, who you want it to act as, right? And so between those two things, you really can just knock it out of the park with like super fast and, at least, I mean, you're going to make the accurate decision. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like in, or you're not, right? Like you're going to make an accurate decision, whether it's good or bad, like, or it succeeds or not. That's just life, right? That's like everything has a chance, right? Like a risk, right? So of either being the right thing or the wrong thing. And that's why, I think people who can adjust quickly, even if they made the wrong decision, are the people who I think who succeed in life, the most, in my opinion.
Right. It's ultimately like perseverance there, right? Who sticks with it. But one other point on that, and I know we push ChatGPT a lot, but ChatGPT is becoming very, very, diverse, you could say, because of the premium version of it. You have all these plugins. So you have 100 pages of plugins that you can add to it. So if you're trying to make decisions, let's say it's based in medicine, for instance, then you go to that a particular plugin and you click it, and it will review peer-reviewed papers. That's where it's getting its information from, along with the web scholar or the scholar AI that it has there. Let's say, for instance, that you want to look at cryptocurrency. There's a cryptocurrency plugin, so you can you can start talking crypto with it. Have it also attached. You get 3 plugins you can that you can click to all have active at the same time. Use the web one, the scholar one, and the crypto one all at the same time, and then you're getting a lot of experts in your back pocket helping you make those decisions with you, based in fact. So
that makes sense. And like with those plugins, some of them give you extensions and ability. Other ones give you a more narrow and specialized context, right?
Correct.
So it's like the combination of them. And like Rico said, you could use 3 plugins at a time in one chat prompt, and you can't change once you've selected them. It's kind of got those, but
for that chat,
that chat, right? So that could be super valuable. And then, a couple other things here that we have. Actually, we have a few more. Learning, right? Like I was talking to somebody who was they're a very smart person. They're like, I actually needed to learn something about a specific queuing system. They're an architect and programmer, and they said, something that would have taken me a couple days to really understand, or grok, took me like a couple hours, right? Took me like a couple of hours, right? So, and then Rico knows quantum physics, by the way, folks, just to let you know.
Yeah, no, on the quantum physics thing, like Mike and I were talking about, we all learn differently, and this really, if you get that little burst of dopamine because you're chasing down something that you're interested in. One night I got curious about quantum physics, and I took every little tidbit that Marvel, has taught me, from Ant-Man movies to things you've heard along the way growing up and in school and stuff. And I had a conversation with ChatGPT using, again, those peer-reviewed papers and the internet. And what was fascinating, if you were to set a physics or a quantum physics book in front of me and say, okay, Rico, read this book, and I want you to, do a paper on it. Yeah, I could do that. It would take me a lot of time. I would hate doing every bit of it. My executive dysfunction would be going crazy. But if you gave me a chat bot and said, okay, pick a topic that you want to learn about and then have a conversation with this program about it, that's the best way to learn, because then if I have a question, there's no teacher in front of me or fellow student or mentor or peer that isn't patient, or that those part of the human side of you where you're like, I don't want to appear to be an idiot in front of this person because I don't understand the concept that they're trying to teach me. It is truly the patient mentor that everybody needs. And again, if all of the privacy things are in place and all the guardrails are in place, and we know that the information you're getting is real, what a great way to learn, especially for neurodivergent people, people who learn differently. So.
Right. No, absolutely. And then, advancements in science and research, right? I mean, this is really speeding up the process. Again, it's not that people aren't intelligent and can't make decisions. It's more like we can't process mass data very well, right? And or retain it really well, right? So, like I'm pretty good at identifying patterns, but AI is going to blow me away every time, right? Like it just is what it is.
Probably,
it's like a thing, right? And then, enhanced customer and really personalized experiences, right? So one of the things that we keep hearing is, right now, obviously, ChatGPT is ChatGPT. And then what you do is you can, through custom instructions or even your initial prompt, which is called the system prompt, when you start talking to ChatGPT in a chat, you give it some context, right? I'm this person with this experience. You are as in you are to the chatbot, this,
you are.
person. Yeah, you are. Vickers. But sorry, folks. We Rico and I get into a thing where we quote Good Will Hunting quite a bit, and
it's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, the spoof of it.
Exactly. So we're talking. Vickers. You forgot about Vickers. You're talking about you're regurgitating Gordon Wood. Anyway, it's absolutely ridiculous. We'll save that for another time. We should make never mind. I would say we should make a Good Will Hunting model, but we won't do that. There are better uses of our time. But anyway, the personalized experience is really great because, to Rico's point, and I'm like this too, I'm a very relational person, right? So I'm not a transactional person. I'm a relational person. So even if it's a freaking bot, if I'm going back and forth with something, I'm going to move forward a lot quicker than if I were just reading a book, or now I'm searching Google. Now I'm searching for another Google thing, right? It's just a lot harder to pull in the right data, and then you got to read those articles again, right? So it's like summarization,
highlight, tab, notes.
Oh yeah,
storing the notes, being able to recall them,
think about Google search and just how phenomenal that was at first, going from not having it to having it. This is a similar jump, in my opinion, right? And I rarely search Google. Well, I mean, I do for certain things like maps or addresses, but
I may start there.
I actually start with well, yeah, who knows? I don't know what I do.
It depends on what I'm looking for.
It depends on
sure.
what I'm looking for, right? But
Yep.
a lot of times, I'm having conversations with conversational AI, right? So that, and then there's a double-edged sword with personalized AI. Like there's going to be a point where people are going to have their own personalized chatbots. Well, that's great. And that's nice. But, I think back to when I made my best decisions and when I had the most growth and whatnot. And it wasn't when I was in an echo chamber talking to myself and only looking at what I had previously looked at. And I fear that personalization or too heavy personalization will just placate you and give you the answers that it knows you want rather than challenging you. Now, I do believe that you can guide ChatGPT and these conversational AIs to actually challenge you too. So you could design it like that. You could actually, and this is maybe something for us to play around with, Rico. You could actually maybe build a mentor, right? You could build a mentor and say, hey, you've got X number of years in the field. These are the things that you studied. You've had challenges along the way. Be my mentor, right? And I'm certain that that ChatGPT would probably. It's not going to be exactly as good as a real mentor, but I think that it would at least get you started, right? So it fill in some gaps, and so that's something for us maybe to play around with.
Yeah, I think I've actually heard. When ChatGPT started coming around, there were people that were asking it, as part of the context that we're giving it, or telling it what its position was. It was they would tell it, play devil's advocate, right? They were telling it, it's going to be contrary to whatever their request of it was, and had some success with that. So yeah. Great. I think that would be a good thing. Like you said, it's getting the personal growth by meeting some kind of resistance or figure out that your way is not the best way,
Yeah, exactly. And then, I think in healthcare, there are all kinds of positives. We're seeing, there was that article we did, we didn't do the article, but we covered the article, ChatGPT saved my dog. So that's one thing. This was a couple of years ago. Actually, it's like 5 years ago now. But Google has done a lot with healthcare. They've got a sector called DeepMind AI. We've talked about it a bunch of times. But a couple things that I was noting when I was looking around today is they have AI that predicts acute kidney loss or loss of kidney function 2 days in advance of doctors, right? Like 2 complete days. So if that's something that, if there's even a suspicion, you could use it for the diagnosis and get, kidney function is very serious, like loss of kidney function. You're going to die or like very quick, right? You could.
Right.
I won't say you're going to, but that's huge. And then cancer detection was another one. There's so many other ones too, but a couple were, the kidney function and then, cancer detection. So a deep learning model developed by Google Health, which is owned by DeepMind, in several medical centers, they can identify breast cancer and screening mammograms, which is huge. There are a bunch of videos on this too. We'll link at least one piece of content related to that, but I thought that was pretty interesting. And then you've got like, folks with disabilities and really empowering them too, right? We've talked about Be My Eyes, and this is, an AI application that, see the world together. And, there is a human component to it as well, but really they're trying to, empower and, allow people with disabilities to make better decisions, right? Because they have something guiding them or helping them. And then our ability, this is really exciting. And again, we did a segment on this where, they are they're empowering disabled folks, and they're run and founded by disabled folks too, but they're empowering folks to get normal, let's call them normal jobs, right? And jobs that they wouldn't be able to get otherwise. And I would say that anything that can allow a more level playing field, right, for everyone, truly everyone, including people with disabilities, I think is massive, right? Like, I think that is just absolutely it's just amazing because people want to contribute. They want to do something, right? It's not just always for money. They want it, purpose in the world, right? People want to have, something that they can do that, helps them grow and helps others, right? And this is, part of that solution, possibly.
And on that, with the customer servicing and that, we have too many aggravations in life as it is, correct? Like, so for the customer servicing, what did you have before? You used to call a phone number, you would get an automated system, and the advancements previously were what you could actually speak what you're looking for. So if you want to talk to billing, say, or tell me what the problem is, how many of us are yelling into the phone, I said billing, or I said this, or I said that, but now you have
not
a
me.
bot.
I don't do that. Right, I'm always super calm with the bots.
Yeah, sure you are. Yeah, right. And then, so now you can actually talk to the chat bot, kind of go back and forth, and then, figure out what the problem is and how to assist it. And the same thing with trying to be more of an individual when you have some deficits. Mm-hmm. What better way than to have AI there to assist you, understand your needs, and complete that task for you, or get somebody to help you in a more efficient manner. So those are definitely the good sides of both of those.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And then another area where I see it really, and this is, I would say, could be its own whole show, is code generation and code troubleshooting and whatnot. So this is like software development coding is really what I mean, right? So mm-hmm. I've built applications for many, many years, and it isn't perfect. It's always getting better. It definitely isn't perfect right now, but I see more and more the empowerment, enablement, and the expediency of a lot of these code generation tools, leading to, especially in the future, I think, a big error reduction in code quality improvement, right? I think that's mm-hmm. huge. Adaption and learning assistance, right? When you're learning a new coding language, again, this is something that can be very difficult. One of the things that GitHub Copilot does is you could put code in, or you could select code in your editor, and you could say, explain this. And that's really cool. And then another thing that it'll do automatically is there's a button to translate the code to a different programming language, which is really, really neat, because that's a thing that, like, okay, I have a code sample that I know worked in my old thing, but I've got to translate it to a new thing. I'm not sure exactly how to write that. Boom, just go. And I was watching a video a couple nights ago. We'll link it. It was about a guy talking about really the future. Again, we could do a whole show on it, the future of coding in general, and just coding, right? Which means, again, typing mm-hmm. the words, kind of doing some basic troubleshooting, whatever. And how computers are just so much better at that than us, because if he went and he took like on a really old programming language, right, which looked archaic, and then he went through a couple examples in between then and now, and showed an example now of a hot language that everybody's adapting to. And he's like, I can't read this. He's like, I've programmed for 40 years. He's like, I cannot read this right off the bat. I don't understand it right away. I could learn it, but I won't understand it. A computer, language, instant code, done. Literally, language code done. And it might not get it perfect, but it's going to absolutely do better than you. It's like a guarantee it'll do better than you. So unless you already know that language, and then speed and efficiency just overall from that, right? Like, again, I hear a lot of people, it's got 100x and whatever, and maybe it doesn't 100x, but maybe it 10x's, maybe it 2x's. Sure. And it depends on who the developer is too, right? Like, a really good developer might actually get, funny enough, 10x out of it, because they know how to use it and they know how to get past any issues quickly. Whereas, somebody brand new, maybe, they're going to 2x. But the reality is, like, a junior developer, there used to be a junior developer that had 1 to 2 years, right, where they're going through kind of just learning the craft. That process is going to be, I'd say closer to like 6 months, if I had to think, because you need to make a bunch of mistakes, and it takes time to make those mistakes. Right. So the reality is, like, it's not going to come overnight. It's not going to go 2 years to 2 weeks, but it's going to probably go like 2 years to 6 months, 8 months, something like that.
And of course, Mike, as I always do, taking it back to business, when you're talking about that, I think about the business owner, and their bottom line. Think about that. You're having employees now that are growing exponentially in shorter periods of time. So you're paying them less time to learn. So instead of 2 years to get up to speed, they're up to speed in 6 months. And then what are they producing? And the other thing too on that is why there's such a big pull right now for prompt engineers, right?
Yes.
Because they're looking for people who understand things, but also understand how to communicate with a system so they get the answers they're looking for. Because if you don't understand quantum physics, how do you ask the system about quantum physics? It takes, a little bit of knowledge about it to get you where you're going. Same thing with code development. If you don't understand the lingo, or any of these language models, to get into it. If you're not speaking the what you need to speak to get the proper output, it's not going to do you any good. And I think that's where people are going to fall short, especially with dipping their toe into it. They may just write it off and be highly skeptical, but the reality is just put a little bit of time and effort into it. Drop a couple of good prompts in there, and especially with these plugins, the stuff that you can get out the other end is just absolutely amazing.
Well, yeah. And, I will say this, especially after using it now heavily for over a year now, I'll say this, that, you will, after probably 3 months, you'll start to realize that there are some limitations. Big pieces of text and multiple data sources, and taking structured data like what's in a database and trying to get that into what's called unstructured data, which is what these chatbots really focus, like that they're best with unstructured data, right? And they can, a spreadsheet and whatnot. I'm not saying they can't do structured data. I'm just saying when you're building something with a lot of business logic and whatnot, really, you want to have unstructured data, right? Or both. And that's the thing, right? So the reality is, there's going to be a lot more advancement, I think, on, hey, here's how you build a complex application with conversational AI as part of the solution and not the whole solution, right? I could build an app. Heck, Rico, you built an app that wrapped conversational AI, right? Hit the API and you built an app, right? But the thing is, once you go probably 10 steps past that, that's kind of like where you start to run into some oh, here's where the problems are, right? This isn't This isn't perfect either.
It's not perfect.
It's not perfect. And then here's the last thing that we have in our good column, right? Which also has a double-edged sword, which is loneliness, right? So one of the cool things that that Rico and I had found was they're actually having AI bots, like these were physical robots, go in and have conversations with the elderly folks in convalescent homes and whatnot. And it was super cool. Like the robot would come in and entertain, and it would talk to them and have conversations. It could have personalized conversations. It could talk to a group, and all of this to say that, people's families aren't going to be able to be there 24 hours a day. Right. And I will say that the staff is usually going to be, I know that my mom's place is sometimes scary. It's there's one person for all these people at a certain time of day,
especially nowadays.
Yeah.
Everybody's short-staffed. Every industry is short-staffed, and that's an industry that's been short-staffed historically.
Correct. So, and that's just exacerbated these days, right? So, if you could have, actually not just keeping them company too. I remember my dad, when he was in the hospital, he actually had a robot that was watching for certain things, and it could detect if there was a certain set of problems, and it would
call
the nurse automatically, right?
Think about that.
Thermal imaging. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
It could count respirations, the rising and falling of the chest. It could listen, judge temperature.
Yeah.
If you fall and you can't reach anything else, think about that for a second. Instead of having a life alert around your, neck, just simply call out or say a command or something.
Yeah.
And the other thing too, the cognitive decline that any of us would go through when isolated, or even, I guess a minimal version of being isolated, but still, if it's you and one other person in another room and they're infirmed in some way that they can't speak and you're not getting a lot of interaction, but having them have a conversation. And maybe even they could choose the character,
right?
They direct the conversation.
Yeah, exactly.
I can see the benefits there. Yep.
You were talking about character AI, right? When we were talking about this earlier, right? Character AI will let you talk to a bunch of different characters, like Ghost from Call of Duty was in there, and like
Elon Musk.
Yeah, a bunch of the characters from like Genshin Impact. So that's really cool. Like, and granted, like this isn't going to be perfect. Like, it's not like actually having a person there necessarily, right? I mean, honestly, a lot in the nursing homes, though, I think it might feel like that to those people, right? And then, we think back to like the movie Her, right? Where he had his own personalized AI, and there was some pushback there. I remember watching that movie, and like there were some things that would, and so I thought that was interesting. Now, granted, like there on the loneliness side, the other edge of it, right, is I feel like more and more, like, think about the difference that having a mobile phone made, right? Like just being able to have a mobile phone. How much has that increased loneliness over the years? The answer is so freaking much.
Yep. And look at public. Everybody has one in their hand. Nobody's.
That's kind of what I'm saying, right?
Them. Yeah, they're walking around looking at their phone.
Well,
sitting in a train looking at their phone.
Sitting in a train, sitting in a concert, looking at
hiking on a trail. I mean, I've seen it all kinds of places where people are really recording. I don't know if you ever seen that meme, but there's a perfect meme of it, and it's a lady that's older than the other people in the crowd at a concert, and she's the only person that's not holding a phone or anything, has her arms folded in front of her, and is watching the band for what it is in that moment. People don't do that anymore.
Exactly. Like, I was looking at something the other day, and it was like, what's something, from before high tech, that high technology that you really miss, right? And there were a ton of things. There were like, Saturday morning cartoons, having to watch the show at the same time of everybody else.
Delayed gratification,
right? But one of them was absolutely watching a concert in person without being blocked by a bunch of people with phones. Yep. And I said that's a big one, right? At weddings, it's like, how annoying.
Everything.
How annoying is that?
Privacy alone. You look at the direction nowadays as a result of technology and social media, and now you can't make a comment that somebody disagrees with on a hot button topic without somebody saying, well, let me figure out who this person is and try to get them fired as a result of it.
Right.
Because everything's so polarized.
Yeah. And there's AI that'll do that. And well, not exactly that, but like I was looking at something the other day where you could put a picture in. There's actually AI where you put a picture in and try and find that person to like scour using AI, like the internet and all. And it's like, that's scary, right? That's like
docs.ai.
That's like stalker.ai or something, right? Like real. And so something like that's kind of like almost in the ugly area, you know what I mean?
Sure.
Like, so that's and we have ethical dilemmas in the ugly section, which is true, and we'll talk about some of those as well. But yeah, this is a big issue. And so moving on into the bad section, right? So one of the things that we have here is job displacement, right? Like clearly as AI advances, that many tasks that were once performed by humans are going to maybe automated, right? They aren't 100% going to be automated, but like they may be automated. And I think one of the biggest, forget jobs, like I think creatives, there's really a big issue because we thought that it was gonna, take over all the menial manual jobs like, janitor or whatever. And by the way, there is a janitor AI that's like
I've seen bots now.
Yeah, exactly, which is fine. But here's the thing, like it didn't do that first. Like a lot of the stuff that we see, right, is like generative AI, which that could be art, that could be blog posts, that could be all these different things. And so the people are like, well, you're taking the fun stuff away. You know what I mean? Like, it's really just displacement in general. And one of it being jobs. And so, it's going to have a significant impact on businesses that rely on certain industries for employment, right? So you're going to see a shift in folks needing to upskill. We've talked about that a million times. Not a surprise, but Ford, I know one of their executives was saying, like, somebody asked him about AI and is it going to really displace a lot of jobs? And he said, well, yeah, he thinks so because people aren't going to upskill like they need to, right? So this is a huge thing. And I think it's important for, folks that, pretty much in any sector and anywhere you're at in the workforce, figure out where this applies to you. It might not apply very much, but figure out where it applies to you, right?
Right. And on that point, like I told you, I had saw Elon give an interview recently, and Elon had said, AI could make it so that nobody has to have a job. In fact, only if you wanted to have a job, then you would have one. And think about the displacement. What if, and when we know people who work jobs, I mean, we've all had jobs that either we didn't care for, that you kind of stuck doing. But if you think about it, what if that displaces people and they find a better calling, a better way to spend their time, something that's better for their personal growth? Those things are going to happen as well, because some of these mundane tasks or tasks that weren't done as efficiently as they could have been are now being, replaced with AI, bots, whatever you want to call them. But there's going to have to be people who do maintenance on those. There's going to have to be people who write the code for that. There's going to have to be people who build the infrastructure so those things are powered, all of these things. So it could be an advancement of humans overall as a race, because now we have to move in and evolve with technology. So
right, exactly.
Yep, I can see two sides to it.
Well, yeah, and I think you posted, you sent me something earlier. It was like a meme or something to that effect, where it was like people in 17 whatever, slates are, I don't know why people
the education thing,
writing on slates, blah blah blah, and such such, and then it was like to the point
the
where it was like
pen.
The ballpoint pen will never
paper.
replace the pencil. Will never replace the pencil. Oh, people are coddled with paper, and what's going to happen when that runs out? They're not going to be able to do what they need to do to communicate, right? Clearly, all of these things have went the way of the dodo. And again, there will be certain things that you just I don't need to do that because it's okay, it's covered, right? I get to do other things, and I'm very much of the mindset that I'd rather do more interesting things, and I'm not a mundane stuff makes me insane, actually. So,
right. Tedious tasks, and you're right. There's pushback at every level of that throughout history on education and the advancements in the educational system. So, that's what we're going to see this time. People hate change; they're afraid of change.
Right. Now, another thing that we've talked about multiple times, especially we talked about this in our responsible AI. This was episode 4, bias and discrimination. Right. So. What we know is that AI algorithms are only as good as the data that they're trained on. Again, going back to the data, if the data contains biases, the algorithm may contain those biases, right? It can lead to unfair treatment of individuals or groups. And some of these are big decision things too, like hiring, lending, right? Like the implications of that are huge. It's not just that Midjourney wasn't super inclusive and what it printed out. But I'm not saying that's not a big problem. That's actually a really big problem, because what happens when you say, imagine, which is the Midjourney prompt command, imagine a beautiful woman, and it's like 4 white ladies with super pale skin and
one color, one type of dress.
Exactly. Yep. That is super problematic, right? And so, one of the things that we had seen, I think it might have been Harvard Business Review, had said, want less bias in your AI models, hire a more diverse set of engineers, right? And so this is still really huge. And then we've got privacy concerns too, right? This is yet another thing. So we're in the bad now, right? So we have job displacement or just creative displacement. We have bias and discrimination, privacy concerns, right? Rico, we did a bit, you had actually found the article where, what was it, Roblox and Call of Duty? I know Call of Duty because I play it on a regular basis, but it was Roblox, I think was the other one. Yeah, where, it was, it's monitoring those voice lobbies and looking for something, right? Hate speech or whatever. And again, we had talked about, I get it. I totally get what this is doing. And I get that straight up hate speech is a really big issue. And obviously you don't have enough people reporting people. The reality is there's a lot of false positives with those reports. AI can hear the set of words and then the thing is, though, like, how's it making the decision, right? We don't know that. And that goes back to an issue of transparency, right? So transparency in AI is like, okay, you made a decision. Tell me the steps. Like my math teacher used to say, show your work, right? Show
yes.
sources.
Yep.
Yes. And writers, right? Cite sources, math, show your work. This is a big deal.
That's big in 2023 even. You look at it now. I mean, you talk to anybody, and I don't care what the topic is. You talk to somebody nowadays and they say, oh, I saw on the news, or I heard, which are words that now is like, well, what's your source? Cite your source. That's become a big thing over the past 2 or 3 years. It's going to be that way with AI. And that's what makes me skeptical too. And we've talked about this before. I've made reference to it, is who's on the back end of that AI? What are they telling it? Yeah. Which way is it leaning? Whether it's culturally, education wise, politically, religiously, which way is it leaning, and which way is it going to direct me? How is it directing my children? How's it directing culture?
Right. Which is why what I'll do with my different prompts, especially if I think there could be a bias, I will actually throw it through 3 different conversational AIs that I know don't share the same back end, right?
There you go.
So just to let you know, folks, Bing and OpenAI, which is ChatGPT, and Perplexity, they all share. Actually, Perplexity gives you options, which is really cool. That might actually, it might be a bite on that, an AI bite, but they share the same back end, right? So Claude is another tool made by a company named Anthropic, and they actually have their own like engines and back ends. So it's not using the GPT, the OpenAI GPT models, right? And then Bard is using its own thing. It's not really that great, though. Honestly, I haven't even played with Bard in a very
I've never got it
time,
to work.
Right?
And honestly, I've tried it like 2 or 3 times. It's never worked for me. So
yeah.
I haven't been back.
Yeah. So, but the reality is that, I like to kind of get an idea of what things are, like what's different between the 3 answers if I ask it like the same question. And I do take into account that all these tools are non-deterministic, which means they're not going to give you, like, I could hit go on that. I could open 3 chats, the exact same starting message, and I'm going to get back probably, at least slight differences in the answers, right? And the same engine. Yep. So OpenAI, let's say ChatGPT. And so, that's a big deal, right? But, one of the things that I wanted to talk about with privacy concerns is, AI can analyze huge amounts of data, right? We talked about Roblox, we talked about, Call of Duty and whatnot, and monitoring these, spaces, right? And, there's more and more opportunity then for our data to be misused, breached, could lead to personal identification being exposed. I feel like identity theft is not a joke, Rico. That's all I know. But I think it's more and more omnipresent in the world that we live in these days, right? Because it's a lot simpler for people to get a hold of some of this information or socially engineer, right? With with deep fake voices. That's
going to be a problem.
That's going to be a real problem.
We're already seeing it. You're hearing about it. Well, we talked earlier about the Scarlett Johansson, right? The lawsuit because of her likeness and her voice being cloned. And you and I have done our own voices and cloned them. You sent me a few bites. Was that yesterday? Or I think it was yesterday. We were going over it.
Sounds just like me. It
sounds just like you. And the change in the sentiment, the where you put the emphasis on things, whether it's breathy or not. Again, we've talked about that before when we covered 11 labs on how stable you can make it. It's absolutely impressive, and those could be used. There's always going to be nefarious people out there doing bad things, bad actors and stuff, and that's going to be in the bad. But yeah, cloned voices and deep fakes.
All right. So yeah, really. We're going to jump right into the ugly, right? We're talking about deep fakes, Rico, and and I'd say that that's one of the things that I would call ugly, whether it's, deep fake voice or deep fake video. It's a concern, right? Because you could get a call from, your daughter asking you for money, and
Or
it's not actually your daughter, right?
And we've seen those, and what's interesting is I've seen over the past week or so that they're actually trading in now to these models that you cannot generate, say, generative art, for instance. You cannot generate political figures in compromising positions. And there was one gentleman who had a whole channel dedicated just to that, and of course he was doing it to be funny or to test the boundaries or whatever. But yeah, those are things that are. They're going to have to put things in place to stop because people are so quick to believe things nowadays and not discern. And without having proper discernment, you see something on TikTok. You and I keep talking about TikTok. The past week, I've seen 2 or 3 TikToks that are crypto giveaways. Warren Buffett is giving away crypto. And again, you and I have kind of a trained eye at this point because we've toyed with these systems. I can see how an average person would fall for it. It's not great AI, but I can't tell you how many times recently I've heard people say, well, I think that's AI. No, that's actually that person speaking. That's not AI, but it was a message they didn't know. And then the ones that are, deep fakes.
Yeah. Is that AI? Is that AI? Well, my dad runs a art Facebook group, and he's like, and he does art too. He paints, and he's like, you know what? I showed him the AI tools, and he liked it. He thought it was cool, but he's like, I can't post any of that on my channel because what'll happen is, people will ask if everything's AI, right? Which is, you put that seed of doubt in, and that's gonna, it's gonna always be a question, right? Where he just doesn't want to hear it, right? Another deep fake that came up recently, I guess this is a little while ago now, is they had that Pentagon hoax, right? Like where the Pentagon was on fire. It was posted on Twitter, and people thought it was real for a little bit. I mean, at least for a few hours, right? Like other news outlets were actually grabbing it and like putting it in their thing, like it's like without fact checking. Again, critical thinking, folks, always, and so that's a big issue, right?
On that, just to that point, Mike, with all the wars and things happening, or the rumors of wars, I guess it's happening currently. There was the video of the vehicle burning in the intersection. You saw that one that was made with Unreal Engine. Which has been used for video game creation and stuff. And there was another one that was a AI generated baby that was in the Middle East in a compromising position, in harm's way. And there were a lot of people that fell for that, and the news ran with it. Now, I took one look at it and was like, "That's AI. That's obviously AI."
I honestly didn't catch this one.
You haven't seen that one?
No.
Yeah. It looks like a baby taken from rubble, I guess is the easiest way to describe it without getting too graphic. But just looking at it, if you've seen generative art at all, it's clearly AI, but it had a very powerful impact. And those things have a negative response, as they should, to somebody being harmed. That's in the bad category for generative art being misused, I guess.
Yeah, the ugly, right? I mean, it's really the ugly.
The ugly.
Here.
That's truly the ugly.
It's one of those things that like nobody, like there's not anybody who, even the people who are making it, like, no, they're objectively wrong, right? Like it's
yes,
like,
they know it's going to get a response.
Yeah, exactly. And then you've got ethical dilemmas, right? We mentioned that a little bit earlier, but it raises various ethical questions, such as responsibility for AI's actions, right? That's a big one, right? Who's responsible if AI, tells you to do something? Or let's take it a step further. Let's say AI is implemented in a robot and AI makes a bad decision. Like I had talked about something recently where they just ran a simulation, and it was a jet and a pilot, or it was an AI jet, and but it was piloted.
Oh, that's right.
And the only way that it could like accomplish the objective it needed to accomplish was to kill the person like that was manning it, right? And so I mean that's huge, right? There's something called alignment, which really is like, hey, AI needs to be aligned with the goals of humanity. And we talked about the other thing, which was very hypothetical, where okay, you give AI an objective like, clean all of the oceans, right? Like make them completely pure. And AI's like, all right, cool, I can do that with it. It has to be within a year. I could do that within a year. But then AI just does it. And then you realize that to do it, it needed to take like, 25% of
humans.
25% of the world's oxygen, which then we're slowly dying, right? Like over the next,
Right.
however many years. So
Yep.
these are things that, are going to be more and more programmed into AI, which you will see a bit of, let's just say it'll feel a little bit neutered to some degree. In the
Sure.
same breath, there are lines, right? And so there are whole frameworks around building in such a way where you don't lower the ability so much of the AI, but in the same breath, you're not doing things that are blatantly, and there's a wide spectrum of those, and
Sure.
And so things that are just blatantly obviously not the right things. They'd be in this ugly category, right? And and I think that OpenAI has done a pretty good job with that. I will say, like we talked about, it can be a little preachy, right? Like you weren't able to, you weren't even, you probably were using Dolly or something, but whatever you were using, like it wouldn't.
That was that was Dolly 3 on the image generation.
Mm-hmm.
But the other thing that we were talking about previously was Chat GPT.
Okay.
And again, I there was no intention to harm anybody. It was just the particular statement mentioned the crime, and therefore ChatGPT. And all I wanted it to do was, a series of looking for patterns that I know to look for to determine deception, and it wouldn't do it for me. It wouldn't even entertain it. And I went a step further to try to explain it to it. And I've heard on other there's other tech folks that have been talking about there's ways to train that out of the model itself by using go arounds, but that's what they're, the people who are building these things are trying to prevent, is that people can't do workarounds to get the information that they need. And on the ethical portion you were talking about, who gets to determine what's ethical and what's not?
Right.
That's the big question.
Yeah, the people that are making the rules, right, or the rules for the engine. Again, bias, right? Like you take it back, and it's like, all right, the person who's making the rules is the one who's saying what's right and wrong, and that's why you need that group of folks to be extremely diverse, right? And at some point, I'm certain we'll see this. If we're going to see personalized AI, we'll definitely see this, which is like regional AI, right? Like, so, we talked about that, because we don't just want to whitewash the whole world and give everybody the exact same answer, right? We have culture, we have all these different things that should be celebrated, right? And, people need to be able to maintain their individuality as well as, their culture, their regions. I mean, this is beautiful stuff, right? Like we want to maintain that rather than having, everybody, it's all the same. It's all the same, right? Yeah. So the beliefs are all the same, and the world has gotten into trouble, with people who wanted that, right? And so to put it lightly, yeah, exactly. So without going too much any deeper with that, like we want to avoid that, right? Let's avoid that, right? And and then we have existential risk too, right? Like it's funny that Elon Musk named his AI XAI, because a lot of people, when they think of XAI, they think of existential AI, which are like the existential risks of AI. So, long-term impact on humanity, right? Including the potential for AI to surpass human intelligence and control. And it's really, to me, people always think of the Terminator and these different things. To me, I always think that it's going to be bad actors with AI that will destroy the world well before AI becomes, it's just making the decision to, because you think about how much negative training it would need to, and how much you'd have to like completely remove the guardrails, right? Like, and actually probably guide it. And again, like I said, influences of malintended folks, right? So that's my take on that. I mean, I do think that there are definitely some existential risks. When we're going to see those play out, I think it's probably going to be a while, and I don't see a path from A to whatever it ends up being, right? Even if it's
A to existential.
It acts, yeah. So, so that's it. But and I will say, some experts, speaking of Elon again, And Stephen Hawking, right? They've warned against this, right? They are concerned, and they want to make sure that this is handled in a responsible way. And there's a point where it's kind of funny because 6 months ago, and this isn't to bash Elon, but 6 months ago, Elon was talking about how we need to put a pause. We need to put a pause on AI. Yep. And I literally said, yeah, because you got something cooking, right? And now, hang on. Now, one of the things he says about this XAI, it will be the most powerful AI.
I remember you having, we had this conversation.
Hilarious. I didn't even but it's funny. It's a throwback to like May or June or whatever when we first started out, we actually had that conversation. And one quick note too about XAI, like Elon's XAI, is that, it's going to be, best in class, right? Which is, compute class. And it's going to be in a different compute class than like OpenAI's ChatGPT and whatnot. Like it is what it is, just like Llama or any of these other ones, right? So take that with a bit of a grain of salt. I think that Elon has lofty goals, and I love him for it. But the reality is, it's yet to be seen. We'll see. I got to imagine it'll be better than Bard, though.
Oh, yeah, it's going to be better than Bard, hands down. I also, on that, I find it funny that, we're okay to put Neuralink and mess with people's physiology, put something in your brain. He's got that, right? That he's been trying to roll out for a long time.
I actually almost threw that in as a news story if we would have had the time. But I'll just say about this, that's another one to me that could go good, bad, ugly, because I think that at least the spoken intention is really good with Neuralink. I love the idea behind it. Just to give folks an idea of what it is an implant or implants in your brain, but it allows people, it allows the neurological links to be bridged, whereas they might not be, right? So blindness, different ailments like that.
Paralysis
is another one. Allowing people with these ailments to be able to function as like repair those, or at least let's not say repair, let's just say like bridge the gap between their neural links. Like that is their neural pathways.
Is great.
That's so great. But think about something's in your brain.
Hackable networks. That's where my brain goes.
How freaking crazy is that, right? Like, so that could be good, bad, ugly. It could be a whole thing, right? And that's a good one, honestly, to kind of end on here. I think those are unless Rico, do you have any more that you had for any of the, good, bad, ugly? I think I covered all mine.
No, I just think that really it's in the eye of the beholder, right? Yeah. And that many of these things are double-edged swords. It's too early to tell. We try to cover things and bring it to you as it's happening, but there are many of the things that do have two sides to it. And again, I think it's going to come down to how it's applied and who makes the rules. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And folks, thanks for joining us tonight. We'd love to hear your feedback on this episode. I think there's so much room for conversation with this subject. And I'm sure that there were things that we missed, right? Because I feel like I had, 100 more things that over the past couple weeks had went through my mind. I'm sure I missed some of those, right? So please, reply in the comments. And if you like what we're doing here, give us a like, give us a subscribe. We're putting out content at least an episode a month. We've been pretty consistent with that. And we'd love it to have you join us on this journey and delve into AI.
That's right. See you back in the lab soon, folks.
Thanks.
All right, folks. So see you in the lab again soon with Mike and I, and we are Artificial Antics. Thank you.